This has just brought a lot of people to the understanding that we cannot live the way we are. There are a lot of job losses, people are not able to put food on the table, and it has created that climate basically where people are saying enough is enough.
Hello everybody, welcome to Equals. This is Max.
Welcome everyone, this is Nabil. That was Wafaa Abdurahman that you just heard in our introduction. She's an amazing activist in South Africa, involved in the protests over there. On this episode today, we're going to be listening to her. We're going to be talking to a school teacher in Malawi, to a security guard in London, all about this extraordinary cost of living crisis that our world faces right now. And Max, just looking at the news coverage between this episode and the last, it's just mind-boggling to see across the world how this isn't in the news enough. And, you contrast that, for example, with the news about, the Queen and the monarchy. It really gets you thinking.
Yeah, I think there's some truth that the kind of media across the world is often owned and run and prepared by people from, nearer the top of society. So, the stories of ordinary people struggle to get through in any normal time. But I also think there's something about the nature of this crisis where you've got like a billion personal tragedies, family tragedies being played out worldwide, all mini stories of their own, if you like, where families are having to face impossible choices between heating their homes or having enough food to eat. So, yeah, I mean, it really isn't making the news, but it is an enormous crisis going on in every country.
I guess with our media empire here of the Equals podcast, we can try to redress that balance a bit.
Yeah, with our media empire. I mean, but definitely, if we can do anything, we should use this platform of Equals to give space to other voices and other stories, and that's what we're going to try and do today.
Absolutely, and it is easy to sometimes repeat this word crisis, isn't it, Max? So, dare I say you've been around a long time, more than some of us millennials, Max. How big is this moment?
Well, I wasn't quite there for World War II, but yeah, I have been around quite a lot longer than you. And I mean, you could probably tell that I've got a certain maturity about me that comes with experience.
Sure.
But I mean, certainly for me, in my adult life, I've never seen anything like this. I mean, we had the financial crisis, it's true, but this is like a kind of combination of crises, which is just so dramatic and so profound. I think it's very, very hard to exaggerate the scale of what's going on worldwide. 9 out of 10 countries are slipping backwards on a range of different indicators of progress. It's so sad. All of this progress of getting kids into school being eroded. The life expectancy in the US has declined by something like 7 years. It's really dramatic. So, yeah, it's really, really bad.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, let's go with our first interview to Malawi.
Yeah, Malawi. I used to live and work in Malawi, and the interview is with a friend I made there, Nellie, and we've known each other ever since. She's a school teacher, and she gives a great interview talking about what it is to live in Malawi today. So, Nellie, thanks very much for talking to us today. So, we've been talking a lot recently, and over the years, we've had some tough times in Malawi, haven't we? But how does it compare, the rising prices and the situation at the moment?
In the past years, though life was a bit difficult, but it can't be compared to life due to the pandemic of COVID-19. Since COVID-19, my family has faced a lot of challenges. My husband has been dismissed from work since 2019. Up to now, he's no more working. We have to depend on my salary, which is a primary teacher salary. So life is being very difficult since 2019 because the salary I'm getting is not enough to reach the needs of my family. I have a mother who's a widow, which I also need to support from my little salary, and my sister who is also at a school, a secondary school, which also needs my salary to be helped with. I have to pay the bills, water bills, I have to pay electricity bills, I have to buy fuel in terms of charcoal, as electricity is also unreliable. We have to pay for the groceries, medical things like private hospitals, whereby we cannot even afford to go to government hospitals because most of the times the government hospitals don't have enough medications. I'm just depending on the salary which I'm getting, which is 150,000 as of now.
I think 150,000 kwacha, probably about, $200 or something a month, something like that. I'm not sure.
It's $150 to $180.
Okay, $150 to $180 a month
Yeah.
as a primary school teacher. So, give me an example of some of the foodstuffs where the prices increased.
The common foodstuffs which we depend on, for example, what we need for breakfast, like sugar, bread, these have risen to the prices whereby even if I am working, I cannot be able to buy them in a daily basis. I have to go for other localities, which have also gone for higher prices, making life to be very expensive.
What are your coping mechanisms? I mean, are you having to cut back on some foods, having to do things differently?
Occasionally, in the past years, I've been cultivating maize, enough maize and surpluses that maybe I can sometimes sell during the month end so that maybe I can cut some of the bills which I have. But due to the rising prices of fertilizer in the two past years, it has also been very difficult to produce enough maize. In the 2 years above 2020 to 2022, I haven't harvested as it is supposed to, due to rainfalls as well as to the uprising of fertilizers, in which on my salary I cannot even be able to buy even a single bag of fertilizer.
You mentioned also the weather. Do you feel that the weather is changing? And what do you think about climate change?
There's a high impact of climate change in Malawi because recently the weather conditions has been abnormal. Normally we have to receive the normal rains from October to April, but nowadays we are only having a short period of weather conditions. Like this year, we received rains from January to March, which was also not conducive for growing crops. So many crops haven't done well. Even the dimber crops, they haven't done well. So it means that with such a scenario, with many people not working, as my husband is, it means that life has to be very, very difficult.
Is it particularly hard or different for girls and for women in this situation? What's your reflection on that?
Many women in Malawi are single parented and they are taking the responsibility of being a father, a mother themselves, and taking care of the children. And this is a very big challenge. And for example, in our school, we find that three-quarters of the students are being helped by single mothers. So if they have many children, girls in the house, it means that the girls are also affected.
It's a community day secondary school, isn't it? So you do get children from quite poor backgrounds.
Yeah, I'm teaching at a community secondary school, which is located in a rural area whereby many people are very poor. Our school fees is very, very minimal, up to 13,000. But you find that many students are failing to pay that money, meaning that their parents can't be able to afford the money. And sometimes you find even that the children are coming to school without eating anything. They'll stay at school up to something 3 o'clock with starving with nothing in their stomach. So it's also pathetic because if you find that if they're failing to find something to pay for their fees, sometimes they say, we just come to school so that maybe we can improve our lives after finishing our schools. But our lives are not comfortable.
And how can you tell they haven't been eating? I mean, how does that present in the classroom?
If a child has not taken anything, that child definitely cannot perform well in the class. You find that other people might, but some children might be sleeping in the classroom, or sometimes they even withdraw. They say, I can't, I'm sick. Sometimes they tell you, I'm sick, I need to go home. If you persist asking them, they'll say, I haven't taken anything. Then I'm feeling as if I should go home because I'm hungry. And even that last night we didn't have anything. So I just come to school because I just feel like I need to come because I'll be backwards. It's not the only one, but many of the students are like in that situations.
That's really hard. And as we said, over the years we've seen periods of hunger in Malawi. And do you think there is more hunger to come this year? I mean, are you worried? And how does it compare to previous tough times?
Definitely. This year, many people haven't harvested as they do. Though there was this input subsidy program, but many people did not afford to find the fertilizer. As a result, there's poor harvest.
So the food prices will be even higher.
Yeah, definitely it's to be hard, very hard.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
And do you have examples of like really talented students who've just had to drop out, particularly girls?
Yeah, recently we had a Form 2 girl known as the S.L. Joseph. She dropped out because she didn't have anything. Her mother doesn't have anything. She's a widow and have 4 children. Ethel, being the first child, was selected to our school in 2020 21, and she's in Form 2.
Was she
So
talented?
yeah, she's talented, and she dropped out. So when we observed that she wasn't coming to school, we tried to search for her. So we found that somebody have taken her as a maid at her home so that she maybe help her family. So after discussions at our school, we said, no, this girl is talented. We need to get her back to school. So we called her mother and the child herself, and we brought her back to school, whereby she's not paying any school fees. The teachers are contributing for her school fees. We paid for her examinations,
So
and
the teachers themselves have found the money to contribute to
yeah,
the fees,
yeah, yeah.
even with your small salaries.
Yes, and she's back to school now.
Oh, there must be so many more talented young
Yeah,
people having to drop
yeah.
out.
There are many, and many they doesn't disclose to the teachers because sometimes they are afraid. They just be afraid with that. If we say they want to listen to us, maybe they will just shout at us. So you find that in a time of embarrassment, they will not come clearly to us saying, "I can't afford this, and because of this, I'm dropping out." They'll just drop out, and we just observe in the class that the child is not there.
What do you think the government or governments could do to improve the situation?
If the government is trying to implement some laws that will be able to control the prices of commodities, that will much help. In schools, we are having this program whereby they are providing porridge, especially in primary schools. I wish this could also be done in secondary schools because it will motivate the students who don't have enough at their home to come to school despite of their shortages in their homes.
Recently, the IMF were visiting your country. I remember you said to me on WhatsApp you wished you could talk to them. What kind of things do you think the IMF need to hear from ordinary Malawians?
My view was that most of the times when donors came to Malawi, most of the times they meet people who are of top officials. They don't meet the people at the ground to see the true challenges which Malawians are facing. To me, I feel that's bad because the person who is supposed to tell the truth of what life is all about in Malawi is the person who is outside in the village, typical in the village. That one is the person who can tell the truth about what Malawi is all about. Not somebody who's just on the top because they already have some privileges. They have a lot of things which they have. Though they might come from the background of the village, but once they are on the top, they forget about all this.
You know, across the world, the IMF is telling many governments that they have to cut back on spending, maybe cut education spending, cut health spending. What do you think that would do in Malawi if that happened?
Hi, Malawi is already affected in many areas. So if they cut down some of the expenses, of course, for example, in education, we have a lot of challenges, a lot of them. So if they cut some of the expenses in education, it means that the education standard will also go down. If they would ask the government just to improve some of the things they are doing in order to sustain the methodologies which are using, maybe that can help.
I mean, one of the problems that Malawi has and many countries in Africa have is that they have big debts which they owe to bankers and creditors in rich countries. And they have to repay those debts before they can spend any money on schools or health clinics. I mean, if you were able to talk to these creditors, to these banks in the north, what message would you like to give to them?
I don't know if somebody is owing you your things, you always need to be paid back. But there must be good negotiation so that these bankers should understand what we are facing. Otherwise, we can't say we should pay back. They should pay back, but they should pay in bits so that some of the things they should continue working properly. Malawi needs to be improved. Not only the donors should help to improve, but Malawians themselves also should have the mindset of improving. Because if we just say donors should do this, that for us, then that will not work. Education is one of the things that will help a Malawian to be at a position to understand how to improve. So that's why I'm saying we need to improve the education standard because if we have more people who are educated, then they will be able to understand what should be done.
Thank you, Nellie. That was a great interview. I really appreciate.
Thank you.
Oh, I love Nellie. I think she just speaks so powerfully. You just want her to be in charge of the IMF. I mean, just brilliant.
Did you hear the reference to the price controls in there, Max?
Yeah, she should be an economist. Honestly, she's more creative economically than most people in the IMF. That's for certain.
There is something to be said there. It was a very powerful, moving interview, especially what she said about the school kids. But listen, Max, I know that sometimes, the crises we face are presented as a poverty problem in poor countries, but they are all truly an inequality problem in every country. And with that, do you want to introduce our next guest?
Yeah, so our next guest is Walter. He's the father of my son's best friend at school, and he's a security guard here in London, and he's going to talk about the cost of living crisis here in the UK. So, Walter, thanks very much for doing this interview. This is a bit weird. Normally we're talking at the school gate, and now it's all formal. Do you want to just say who you are for the listeners?
Hiya, my name is Walter Thomas.
So what do you do, Walter?
Security, I work nights, yes.
What time do you get in at night?
So about 2:00, 2:30.
And that's, what, 5 days a week?
5 days a week, yeah. Sometime I'm going on the weekends.
How much sleep would you say you get on average night?
Probably 2-3 hours, because I've got 3 little kids that I take them to school in the morning. So I have to get them ready. I wake up at 7, sometimes at 6:30, 7 to get them ready, then take them to school. Yep. So
you get in from work about 2, 3, and then you're up again at 6:30, 7 to get the kids. You have 3 wonderful children, I might add. But yeah, that's a big load, isn't it? I mean, this interview is really just about the impact of rising energy and food prices and just stuff going up. But tell us a little bit about COVID first.
I know quite a lot of people, a lot of friends that lost their jobs, but I was still going in through COVID. The bank was paying for a taxi. I was getting picked up from home, then they'll bring us back home.
When did you start noticing kind of prices going up? When you think of the essentials and you're shopping, what have you noticed in the last, was it like 6 months ago?
Yeah, everything's just shoot up. Probably before I was spending like £50 every 2 weeks. Now I'm spending like £65, £70 every 2 weeks. It's not right. It's just crazy. And it's going to get worse, apparently.
Yeah, I think it probably will.
It's going to get worse again, they said.
And what does that mean for your family?
Cut back on a few things. Cut off my Sky.
Well, that's hard for you. That means no football, doesn't it?
So no football. Exactly.
Listeners, for the record, Walter used to be a professional footballer back in the day. You got rid of your car as well, didn't you?
Yeah, got rid of my car, yeah.
And tell us about electricity.
So I used to put, £20, £25. That used to last me 2 weeks and a few days. Now I'm charging every 4 or 5 days. I have to put money in my electric. So I'm putting £20 in there. It don't even last for 5 days. And it's gone. That's a big difference.
And I think when the winter comes, it is going to be hard for everyone, isn't it? Because I mean, I think it's not easy. But I mean, one thing you said to me the other day was it might be hard for people here in the UK, but it's particularly hard. I mean, you've got family back in Sierra Leone, so you also know the reality there. So tell us a bit about your thinking on that one then.
It's really tough for them people out there, because I've been out there a few times. That's where my mum and dad from, or that's where I'm from as well. Every day, it's just tough for people. There's no jobs. Kids ain't got no food to eat. People are starving, and
And have you heard from family out there about rising prices and rising foods?
Yeah. My brother says rice has gone up. Petrol as well. That's the main thing. Everything has gone up back home as well. And it's sad. People are struggling. And
do you get a lot of messages, people asking for help?
Yeah, all the time, cousins, uncles, and that's a normal thing anyway, but it's just worse now. It's really, really bad.
Yeah, and I imagine they think of you as the rich guy in Britain, don't they?
Exactly, and I'm just, I'm trying my best. I'm struggling myself, but, it's not easy.
What do you think the government should do to help with rising prices? Do you think there's anything they could do?
They should think about the people, because there's lots of people out here ain't got a job, and lots of people struggling, depression and all sorts of things. Them keep raising the price. It's not going to help people.
All right, listen, thank you, Walter. That was perfect.
Great interview, Max. There's an analysis that needs to be heard, right?
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Walter's a great guy and a good friend. And now we're going to hear finally from Wafaa. She's the national coordinator for the Fight Inequality Alliance in South Africa. The Fight Inequality Alliance is a global movement. It's amazing. Check it out if you haven't already. And yeah, we're going to hear from her talking about the cost of living crisis in South Africa.
Absolutely. And Wafaa Abdurahman, what was great speaking to her as well is that, she's a force of nature. She's been part of the struggles over the years in South Africa for social justice and against inequality, but also very much core to the protest movements taking place right now. So let's go over to her. Wafaa, it's been really interesting, my sister, to watch from afar to see how movements in South Africa have been responding to this cost of living crisis. I welcome you onto the podcast, and I start by asking, how did these protests come about in South Africa, and why have they come about now?
South Africa's economy has been in decline since 2008 with the financial crisis. And then it's been exacerbated, by all the austerity measures and things that are happening in our economy. And this has just brought a lot of people to the understanding that we cannot live the way we are. There are a lot of job losses. People are not able to put food on the table. And it has created that climate basically where people are saying enough is enough. The South African Federation of Trade Unions, which is SAFTU, made a call for mass action against the high cost of living. And the invite was extended to us, as well as about 150 other civil society working class formations across the country. So as FEAR South Africa, we have been part to the formation of the Working Class Summit, which is under SAFTU. And this is where the decision to have a national day of action or national shutdown was taken to happen on the 24th of August. So with everything else happening, I think it's just created this conducive environment for mass action, given the fact that many South Africans are basically frustrated with the high cost of living and the economic crisis that we are currently facing. And as you know, and I think many other people know, that South Africa is rated as one of the most unequal countries in the world.
The most, apparently.
Yeah, the most unequal country in the world. And obviously this prompts a kind of inevitability in resistance and class struggle, because the poor is getting poorer and the rich is getting richer. And that's exactly what is happening here. The other thing for us as well that was a great thing is that for the first time, the two major federations, labor federations in South Africa, had an agreement and decided that they're going to support the action jointly, which was a great thing. It's very, very rare that you find them agreeing on anything. So you can see the extent to which this rise in the cost of living has affected everybody, and nobody can stand outside and say, no, I cannot participate.
How does that compare to other moments in the past? Is there something significant about this moment?
I think it's quite significant. I mean, if you know the history, that SAFTU is actually a breakaway of COSATU. If you understand that history, for me, that's very significant, because there was never a time that they could sit around the table and agree. I mean, let alone march together in the street, on common demands. The worst part is that COSATU is in the tripartite alliance with the ANC government. And for them to come out in the street and say, enough is enough, for me, that's a very significant issue.
And Wafaa, what are these movements that have come together? What are they calling for exactly?
There was a lot of demands on a living wage and a proper increase for workers. The demands was around job creation, because unemployment for us is close to 40% at the moment. And then also filling the much needed government vacancies so that adequate services to communities can be provided. The basic income grant for the unemployed was a major thing as well. The issue of decent housing and how housing can lead to job creation, to the need for other goods and services in order to stimulate the economy, but at the same time to give dignity to people. And then also improvement in the healthcare system, because our healthcare is down the pipe at the moment. The reduction on the cost of basic food stuff. The bread prices here has also been fixed. A lot of the companies that we know of are at the moment being taken on by our competition commission, where they are fixing bread prices. Then we also asked for price control on basic services and foodstuffs, that the government should put a cap on the prices to stop the elite and the corporates from putting the burden on the poor. One of the campaigns is also the right to work. As I said, unemployment is quite high, and then tax the rich for the poor to live. This is just a few amongst the many other demands. And I think our critique was basically that we had too many demands and too little solutions at this march. But as you can see, people are really tired and things are really coming to the fore.
What was the feeling on the streets
being part of this with these different groups coming together? Just how did you feel?
I think for me, it was a testament to the things that are affecting people directly at this point. How people are, the struggles of people have become much more real now because it's affecting their food security. They're not able to see to their families any longer. It's affecting them to an extent that they're getting poor health care. You know, people they die in hospitals. There's no beds for them to sleep on in hospitals. You could feel that people are at a point where they are saying, no, man, we cannot do this any longer. You know, we cannot be treated like animals. We are human beings. We need to have dignity. We need to have this. So I think for me, there was euphoria around the fact that people, they want to get up and they want to do something, you know, to get themselves out of the situation that they're in. Yeah.
One of the powerful solutions you spoke about dignity there is this real kind of momentum around this idea of a basic income grant. What does that actually mean, and how would it work?
Implementing a UBIC for everybody is going to be very, very costly. We know that. So at the moment, we have close to 11 million unemployed in our country, and we're thinking it could become more affordable to give it to the unemployed. For us, it's also not a long-term issue. As soon as you get a job at a living wage or a job that can put money on the table, you'd obviously get off the grant. So for us, it's a temporary measure. Our ultimate demand is job creation at a living wage and the transformation of our economic policies and system. And at the same time, we are saying our economic system should rather be needs driven and less profit intensive. And we believe that it is affordable in South Africa.
Because that's something people will ask. They'll think, okay, South Africa, we look at the challenges there, look at the debt, look at so many. How can South Africa, some will ask, afford this?
So since 1994, post 1994, the big thing was that corporates and the wealthy, their taxes reduced. And the taxes on pay as you earn and taxes on ordinary people working, that increased. So basically, the tax burden was shifted to the poor and to the working masses. So for us, we are saying we need to change the tax system. We need to tax the rich. We need to have a wealth tax so that the money that comes into the government coffers can help to pay for the basic income grant. And as we say, it's not a permanent fixture. It's something that will change from time to time as job creation comes in. The second thing we're saying that in South Africa, there's a lot of illicit financial flows. The rich and the corporates take their money offshore into tax havens. And this also reduces the income into the fiscus. That's one of the other areas. The third area is that in South Africa, we've got a government workers' pension fund called the PIC, which has billions in rands, around investment that is just lying dormant there. Why don't they use that as a buffer to support the unemployed? The other thing for us is to reverse the IMF, and maybe they'll say this is very radical, I don't know, but to reverse the IMF and the World Bank loans or to stop future debt. You know, South Africa has a lot of billionaires. There is money in the country that we can use as opposed to going out for these loans. Because at the end of the day, when these loans has to be repaid, austerity measures are put in place. The poor gets affected by it, and these billionaires and that become rich. I mean, for us in COVID, some of the billionaires in our country tripled their wealth during COVID while people were losing their jobs. It shows you that there's money, and money is made off the back of workers. Workers are not remunerated correctly, and at the same time, we're saying there's no money. So for us, a lot of our debt is historical debt that is linked to our colonial history. We're still paying off apartheid debt as well. So the extortion of wealth from our developing countries in the global south has been continuing, and we're saying that we need to put an end to that.
As I was looking into the protests, I saw chants from the time of the liberation struggle against apartheid returning to the streets in these protests. Is there a link there between the fight against apartheid and what you're fighting for now?
You know what? I always say 1994 was this euphoric moment for some people, but for others it wasn't, because at the end of the day, I always say that we may have gotten the vote in this X on a little piece of paper, but it means nothing to billions of people in South Africa. The fact that you may now be able to vote and, raise your voice and do whatever you can do, economically we are still poor. And then at the other hand, this racism is still a major factor within our society. At the same time, there's also a lot of xenophobia raising its head. I think because of the economic conditions that is prevalent. I mean, I'm not making excuses for anybody. I don't think xenophobia can be excused anywhere. But given the economic system that we're under and the fact that people are getting richer and the poor is just being downtrodden further, we will always have these contradictions in society. So racism, even though Black people are at the helm of government, we still have a colonial minority that holds the power, the economic power in our country. So yeah, a lot of things still ring very true for people that have nothing and they don't see their freedom. How do you see freedom if you cannot eat?
Thank you so much, Wafaa, for your time, and power to you and to the struggles that you're fighting for. So thank you.
Thanks, Nabil.
There we have it. There we have it, Max, folks.
Indeed, there we do. And I mean, there are going to be further episodes of Equals. We're really digging into this cost of living crisis, the causes, the solutions. So please stay tuned.
As ever, do subscribe, do share with your friends and family. We're on Twitter @equalshope, and do join us next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.